Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, and a returning guest. But now I have an announcement to make as of, I guess, kind of this episode or whatever. Vasili Gianarakos, I said it right? Gianarakos? Yes. All right, I'm trying, dude. Will now be a permanent mainstay on this show. I've asked him to be part of the show. Honestly, the numbers went up. And me and him have had a good vibe going on. And I, thought it'd be good to get a co-host on this. We will still be doing guests. We'll still be having people on. But Vasili will now be a mainstay unless, there's a scheduling issue or something. But expect him to be on, and maybe we'll come up with some cool new stuff to do as far as content in the future. Maybe we'll do some live shows and stuff like that as well. Vasili, welcome to the show, and welcome to being co-star.
Hey, just you reaching out to me and asking that was, dream come true, obviously. Podcast is fun to be on, fun to record, talk about the Flyers. So I'm excited, to be coming on more than just on a guest basis. And then from there, like you said, we might have some interesting stuff in tune for all the viewers in the future, and maybe spice some stuff up a bit with different segments, stuff like that. So excited to see where we go from here for sure, Yariv.
Awesome. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. And I've already reached out to some guests. Like, I'm going to have Steve Kornianos back on here. I'm going to have Craig Eagles back on, probably reach back out to Bill Meltzer soon. And just get people just to talk about hockey. It's been a weird time of year. And I think with some COVID stuff, like, and the holidays and maybe the Olympics, who even knows, there'll be a slowdown there that we'll have to probably fill with guests anyway. I think there's plenty to talk about.
Oh, of course, especially with the Flyers and just how, bipolar they are on a week-to-week basis. There's always something new to talk about.
Yeah, bipolar is the right choice of words. Before we needed therapy. This is a medical theme going on in this. Before it was like therapeutic. Now we're going into bipolar. Somebody needs to diagnose the Flyers, and we're going to try to do it today. Real quick, though, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks on South. Vasili, you're going to have a Jim Steaks eventually. So, yeah, go eat at Jim Steaks, 3rd Street, South Street. Go check them out. They're Flyers fans. They make great cheesesteaks, chicken cheesesteaks, pretty much whatever you need. They will make it for you, and it will be awesome and delicious. Make sure to check out Jim's Steaks.
As soon as I get to Philly, I'm probably going to take a cab straight from the airport or an Uber just straight to Jim Steaks and have one because it's so good. So,
all right. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, shout out to the sponsor for that one. All right, let's get into it, man. Look, we've both been listening to tons of content out there. I empathize with everybody's frustration. Obviously, we vented our frustrations on here. But I will say this. You and I kind of nailed it last time we were on here. Since then, Lane Vigneault has obviously been fired. We talked about how he should have been fired, talked about he should have been fired earlier. I would make the case that, yeah. And since then, a lot has kind of changed on the ice. I'd say the results are still not perfect in any way, but the Flyers are right now on a 3-game win streak. They just come off of a win as we're recording this, 6-1 win over the New Jersey Devils. And obviously special teams have changed, especially the power play. Now, the Flyers didn't have a single power play opportunity last game and still won 6-1. But their power play has been essentially operating at a 40% clip without Michel Therrien. Being respectful to Michel Therrien, you were not the coach for this power play. And that was obvious to me for months. I would argue maybe even a couple years already. What do you think about the turnaround, Vasili?
I would say, first off, not to toot our own horns in terms of the AV firing, and then the team immediately, rebounding and actually being able to score goals.
Almost immediately.
Maybe we're psychic. I don't know, just to throw that out there. But I would just say with the turnaround, we heard so many people and just so many different outlets going on about, this team has no talent. They are unable to score. They're unable to create offensive opportunities for themselves. And then a coaching change is made and just some slight adjustments in terms of their offensive scheme setup strategies. And then you see how much offensive, opportunities they are able to create for themselves and just get to those high danger scoring opportunities. And just to point out the simplest thing that probably everybody who's been watching, since Yo has taken over, is you've seen a gradual decline in the team wanting to actually dump and chase the puck every single time they get over the neutral zone red line. Versus, picking their spots. So you still see them dump it in if another team defensemen are like gapping up very aggressively. So trying to pinch up at the blue line, poke pucks away from them coming in, carrying it in. You'll see them dump it in. But you just see in general the team being more willing to like carry the puck in, making those east to west passes, kind of make the defenseman guess what they're going to do next versus what they were doing before, which is literally just giving the puck away time after time after time again. And then as a team trying to defend that, you already know, what you're going to need to do. Okay, they're going to come in, they're going to dump the puck in. We're just going to have to race back, make sure we retrieve it, and then start up again. Now it's kind of more of a unpredictability in the sense of how are the Flyers going to come at us and attack. So that's helpful, obviously. And I mean, their goal scoring rate has gone considerably up exponentially, basically, like almost not 100%, but close to that. They're scoring at like a 4-goal a game pace since Yo's taken over, I believe.
I mean, they immediately broke that 3-goal slump. They're scoring 2-3 goals a game.
Exactly.
No, I love your breakdown there. And just to even add to that, this is why I said fire. Like, again, I'm going to toot my own horn here. I'm not analyzing the game. It seems that way to me, like a lot of other people that I listen to. It seems to me like a lot of people are just throwing shit in the wall and hoping it sticks. Like I saw something very wrong. Like you were breaking down, the gaps with the defense. You're talking about the breakup, the way that they're going into the zone, right?
Yeah.
What I was watching was a coach, and I said it over and over again, being out coached over and over and over again. I was watching the system he was deploying, and I'm going, this is not working, and you are not adjusting, and your players have given up on your system. That's why they were dumping so often. There were no available opportunities, and they know that if they turn the puck over or make a mistake, they're probably getting reamed out to some degree. I'm not saying he's a bad dude. I think Michelle Therrien probably ream him out. And I think they kind of got stuck in that loop where the system itself wasn't in place to provide any real offensive opportunities because he didn't adjust. And all of the offense we were experiencing in the beginning of the season was opportunistic and literally relied on the talent available on the team and not the system. And I think eventually caught up. Go ahead. You want to say something?
And then also like a lot of that at the beginning of the season too is just unsustainable shooting percentage. Like they were shooting at like well over 50% pace, which is just not going to continue, and you're not going to continue to score goals like that. And I mean, I think something telling too is Yo said it in one of his pressers, I believe, after the win last night, that it wasn't the fact that they, were indicating to players that they just wanted them to dump and chase under Therrien and AV. It was just the players weren't given, if there was wasn't a dump and chase opportunity, they weren't given that creativity or free reign to say, hey, if you don't see that this is working on the ice for you, don't worry, you can go ahead and try something else. But it seems like with Yo, there's kind of that creativity saying, hey, if you don't see this on the ice and you see as a player this, particular play that we're asking you to make isn't going to work out, okay, you can go ahead and make another play as long as it isn't something that's going to, cause trouble for a team. And I mean, just to point out in terms of the stats, we'll get it right, hitting the nail right on the head. So the Flyers have 19 goals in 4.66 games since Therrien and Vigneault were let go. That's second most goals in the entire NHL over the last 5 games, and then 4 of 5 games are 4+ goals. In Therrien and Vigneault's last 11 games, there was 19 goals and 0 games with 4+ goals. So it just speaks to how quick they're turning things around. Obviously, you can say, I mean, their shooting percentage is pretty high in these last 5 games as well, but you can actually see on the ice they're creating tons of chances. And like, there's some chances that even they probably should have scored on that didn't go in, and then they came in and got kind of a flukier goal. But that's hockey. That's what happens. Right?
No, I appreciate you pulling up those stats. I just want to add in what you're saying because you're getting my brain fire in here. And just to add in what you're saying, look at where the goals are coming from. How many people have scored their first goal of the season as soon as the coaches were fired? Again, could be coincidence. Brown, Lindblom, Sanheim. Like, should we continue going? If you want to look at why your team's confidence is so low, always look at leadership. And I'm not talking about the captain. The captain is part of the team. He's the player. Look at leadership. Yeah. Doesn't make AV a bad dude. Doesn't even make Michelle Therrien a bad dude. But they obviously weren't the right coaches at the right time for this team. You know, maybe they'll coach somewhere else and have success too. I mean, I think
just to jump off what you said, that's a great point, because I noticed like during the height of the losing streak, there was an interview with Giroux, and he was stating that, you know, as a team, we just don't have an identity right now. And ultimately, I would place that on the coaching staff to kind of build that identity for a team, right? So you can see
just to add to that, look at the Hurricanes. Where do they get their identity from?
Look at Brindamore. Look how he coaches. Look at the style of play he's coaching. Look how his players play.
Look at Detroit with bringing in Yzerman.
Yeah.
You get your identity. It's always, if you work at a company, you will see that it's almost always top down.
Yeah.
Almost always. And pointing at your best players on the ice. I'm sorry to cut you off, but you know, we did this with Voracek. Like, how many times do we see people picking on players? Oh, Lindblom's not good. Now it's another guy. Oh, it's Patrick. Oh, it's Myers. It's like, no, it's always a top-down thing. Like, even if your team is not that talented, if they are playing to their worst, that is a top-down issue. We saw what happened to Buffalo. Yeah. They're literally better with their three best players gone. What are the odds of that? And nobody questions if Jack Eichel is amazing.
No.
Nobody questions Sam Reinhart is a very good player. And people questioned Rasmus Ristolainen, and I think Flyers fans would see, guy's pretty good. And they're a better team without them. That is a top-down issue. And that's why I was like, you got to find the right coach.
Yeah, and that's just environment, I mean, coupled with coaching ability and just the way sometimes that, I mean, people and individuals will mesh together in general. Sometimes that's just the nature of things. Like, a group of players might not mesh with a certain type of coach and a certain type of mentality, a certain type of game plan that they're trying, you know, to implement. And I think it speaks volumes to the fact that after those two are fired, the players asked and requested that Mike Yeo stay on. And that just shows that
isn't that incredibly telling?
Yeah. It shows that they respect what he's bringing to the table in terms of his strategies, but also just him probably as an individual. And you're going to want to perform for somebody that, you know, you respect, and somebody that you can see eye to eye with versus somebody you're always constantly, you know, battling against in terms of maybe what they're trying to tell you to do.
It's not. I completely agree with what you're saying. And I think to add on top of that, if you look at the dynamic of what's happening, and we're going to talk about the lineup changes, and we talked about this before the show earlier in the day, you know, if you talk about the lineup changes that happened, there clearly wasn't an alignment between what Yo thought should be executed and what AV and Therrien were doing. Because as soon as he had the opportunity, he made the changes that he wanted, which again is completely normal. That doesn't mean he hates them or thinks they're stupid. I highly doubt that, honestly. I think he just saw things differently, and I think the players recognize that he saw things differently. And I don't know if he's even the coach of the future for this team, but it's just like, it's almost like taking something off their neck for a minute. And like, let's just get into the changes. I mean, Claude Giroux at center. And again, this is something AV did too, so I don't want to take that away from him, you know, but it happened immediately. And I want to comment on Flyers fans in this respect, because the one thing is, like, I've never really been opposed to him being at center again. Never.
No, me neither. And the thing is, like, I understand everybody being like, and hammering on, oh, he needs to play left wing, left wing.
Why? Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I mean, that came from, realistically, Dave Haxtell putting him on Couturier's left wing 3 years ago, and then looking really good, which he does look good, and he's a good left winger.
He's always looked good, but continue.
Yeah, exactly. He's always been a great player his whole career. But I mean, he looked really good in that position, and then people thought to themselves, oh, you know, he's getting older. He needs to stay here to be effective because center is such a demanding position defensively. But they failed to see the stats in this last handful of games with him at center, and he's arguably been better than he was.
Let me ask you this.
Wing. And it's not his natural position because he was a winger coming up through junior.
Sure.
But he's played at this point. He's played center a ton more than he's ever played wing.
He was one of the best centers in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
Why don't people say, like, oh, it's time to move Evgeny Malkin to the wing?
I don't know.
Oh, it's Sidney Crosby. It's Sidney Crosby who's older than Giroux.
Yeah.
It's time. Come on, you're older. Like it's time for you to move you over to the wing. And again, I understand why we did it. We also had a strength at center.
Which
I
now
get
the
it.
team doesn't really have as much of.
Right. It doesn't mean anybody's an idiot or anything like that. I'm not saying that. And I even get the left wing. Look at him on the power play. Like Haxtell, I think actually made a smart move there. He was trying to create a dominant line. Like I totally get it. But it was always like this like fear of like, oh, well, we can't play Giroux in the middle. I'm like, he's our best center. And going back to what we were saying, we were missing a dynamic element down the middle and we had him on the team. And I think Yo was like, okay, we don't have a dynamic center. The only one we have is Giroux and we're playing him on the wing. We're not really short on wingers.
No.
And this is
actually
an
overabundance of wingers on the team, actually.
Dude, and that's what I said actually in the beginning of this year. I said, I actually even brought it up. I think it was maybe privately, though. I don't think I brought it up on the podcast, but I even said, like, if you shift Giroux over the middle and you knock down Hayes to the third line, I was like, you kind of get rid of this whole too many winger, log at the wing thing. And I go, and you have a spot in the middle that's open. So I was like, it kind of made sense to me. And, I get the hesitation, but why is Giroux more hampered than other guys at center?
Yeah. I mean,
that's what I don't understand.
It's almost like a fallacy created in our mind just because we've seen him at left wing for so long. It's almost like he can't do it, but I mean,
but he does everything.
Yeah, realistically, he takes faceoffs, and if you watch him in the defensive zone, even when he was playing left wing, sometimes him and Couturier would switch responsibilities. Where like Giroux's playing super deep like a center, nonetheless. So,
yes,
you never stop doing that stuff. And another perspective I think that people fail to see is if you split up because. Realistically, you had Giroux on the left wing to play with Couturier because they had great chemistry together.
And I'd argue they still do.
No, they still do. But I mean, you can utilize that more on a power play and still have them, build on that chemistry together and create plays that way. And then let's say you split them up at 5-on-5. Now it creates a problem for other teams matchup-wise because they have to literally think to themselves, okay, should we put our best defensive pairing out or try to get them out as much as we can against Sean Couturier and Travis Konechny? Or should we try to get them out against Claude Giroux and Cam Atkinson? And then you have Kevin Hayes in a third line role where arguably, I mean, he is probably right for him just because of the surgery he's coming off of. But we're seeing him kind of get back to himself now in the couple of games and showing a little bit more speed in his stride. So he might even be playing lower than he should. So it really creates a matchup problem for other teams' lineups just because, depending on who's rolling at that time, it's hard, I think, for another team to really match up against each line effectively and limit them, to scoring opportunities because you have one line clicking on all cylinders and then, another line as well. Who are you really going to place against them if everybody's going at the same time? So,
yeah. And I think with Morgan Frost being out and on COVID protocol, we'll see what happens with that. And Farabee's close, but he's still not back. I do kind of suspect that Lindblom's going to play on that line for a little bit. I don't know if that's definitely. Like yeah, I mean, I think it actually makes sense. Like the Oscar Lindblom thing is like really interesting because he is elite, or at least I get that he's not looking his best. I'd make the case about majority of guys on the team up until recently.
Yeah.
But he was always phenomenal defensively, even if he wasn't like the best offensive player. Yeah. And I feel like that would be like a really nice compliment to a guy like Giroux, who has to, if you want to really remove some of the defensive load on him, put a winger, right? And Scott Lawton's doing great on that top line. He looks great. And he's looking really good on that top line with Konechny and Couturier. Like it just seems like the combinations that Yo has put together is like stuff that there's
a lot more thoughtfulness, I think, just in terms of like almost like the whole game.
Don't you feel like and sorry to cut you off, but don't you feel like he understands the strengths of the players he has better than AV?
Yeah, I do feel that. And just going back to your point about Lawton on the top line and people probably losing their minds when they first saw that because you know how it is when
it made complete sense.
I thought it made sense as well, but I just saw on Twitter. Well. I just saw on Twitter, and you know how Twitter is. People saying, "Oh, why are they putting like a fourth liner on the first line? This team doesn't know what they're doing." And then you see Lawton have a great game, and just wonder.
Lawton is not a fourth liner.
Who
would call him that at this point?
I mean, you know those crazy Twitter Flyers fans. You see that all the time.
Lindblom's not a fourth line player either.
No,
I mean,
definitely not.
and I do want to give we'll talk about Willman a little bit too, but I do want to give credit to Yo in the sense that he's putting the right matchups out there, and even the fourth line healthy is not a fourth line. Like if you think about the Flyers with Brassard, with Allison, if Allison's back, you're probably, I mean, it gets kind of crazy. Like
on how you're going to shift the lines around. And
you have no idea what's going to happen because it's like Allison, Brassard, Farabee, like those three guys, that's an entire line. And and when things are going well, you don't necessarily just like want to take everybody out of the lineup.
No.
And then guys like Willman, and then I wouldn't sit McEwen.
Like he's brings some tenacity and physicality.
What are you going to play Frost on the fourth line center?
Yeah, that's the thing. The depth is crazy. So, I mean, there's definitely room. Yeah, when it's healthy. And that's the thing, right?
Hasn't been all year.
Yeah, that's the thing with hockey. There's always going to be injuries. So you need to have that depth so you can make sure you plug guys in. So, in a sense, when people were saying, oh, you can tell as people were saying during this 10-game losing streak, well, now it makes sense why the Flyers picked up McEwen and Patrick Brown, because obviously they are.
McEwen always made sense, though.
Yeah, but people were saying, oh, they picked those players up because they're not a good team. Only bad teams pick up players on waivers. I'm like, that's not the case. First off, but like I said,
Billy Leno picked up by the Philadelphia Flyers, who were Stanley Cup contenders all year, and went to the Stanley Cup, and he killed it.
Like I said, I mean, don't take everything you read on Twitter as I stopped
reading Twitter.
Yeah,
I don't know if our listeners pay attention. I'm not on there very often anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, back to the Lawton, thing that you were pointing out. I think the crazy thing is that you have Lawton on the top line. It really frees Couturier up offensively because, I mean, Lawton's used to those center defensive responsibilities, and he's good in his own zone defensively. So as Sean Couturier is, looking to create more offensively, that kind of takes away from his responsibilities, and then I think opens him up more and probably, gives him a sense of relief in the fact that, hey, I don't have to carry this line in my own zone every night because I have some help. Not to say that Giroux was bad defensively, but I mean, Lawton, I feel like, is a guy that's going to be more focused on the defense side of things first.
He's more physical than Giroux.
Exactly.
That's for sure. And I think that helps Couturier because Couturier is a physical player, but he's not like, it's not like Keith Primeau back in the day.
He's not going to lay the body on anybody.
Right,
he can be physical when he needs to.
It's like Voracek. He's more strong. He's like strong along the boards and whatnot. And I just think it's a right mix. I mean, the mix itself just seems cool. I mean, we've seen Lawton with Konechny before in the past. We've seen Lawton play with Hayes. I think he also just recognized that Lawton was looking good. Like, he's one of the guys who didn't struggle this year.
He's very speedy. And I mean, Konechny's very speedy. So you have two of them kind of play off each other's, play off each other's speed. And then what I've noticed with the line combinations now that you have Lawton, Couturier, and Konechny, and then you have Giroux centering Atkinson and Lindblom, and then obviously Hayes centering JVR and Williman, is you see pairs of, you have two skilled guys and then kind of a guy who's going to be, the worker bee and freeing up pucks in the offensive zone. So you have Lawton on that guy on the top line, freeing up those pucks for Couturier and Konechny. And then you have Lindblom freeing up those pucks for Giroux and Atkinson. Then you have Williman kind of freeing up those pucks for JVR and Hayes. Yeah, and then McEwen on the fourth line. So I think it's smart, actually, if you look at the way he's constructed the lineup. And I think we kind of failed to see that, because a lot of the times when AV, had the lines together, it'd be straight. Yeah, they were shit.
There were lines of grinders, lines of
and
playmakers.
It wouldn't really mesh, and you wouldn't, like, you'd see Giroux, Couturier, and Konechny, they'd create offensively because they're just so skilled. They're going to eventually. Right. But who's going to go and, into the team's other offensive zone and like win puck battles, get in on the forecheck and really grind? Like, those players aren't grinding type players.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know what I could see happening if the team is healthy? I thought about this. It was like, if they're healthy, I hate the idea of moving Lindblom back to the fourth line. I don't think he's a fourth line player, even though he's struggled this year offensively. I really don't believe he's a fourth line player. I think he's a top 9 minimum, especially because of what he's shown in the past. But I do kind of see, like, maybe they keep the lineup the way it is on the top line. Let's assume Farabee is back. I could see Farabee jumping in actually with Giroux and Atkinson. Yeah. Then all of a sudden that line's a little bit different, but I think that could work for sure. And maybe they do keep Lindblom, but then I think the opportunity is to move Frost with left wing with Hayes and JVR.
Yeah.
And
And
that
he'll
is
open
an
up space. He'll open up space for
exactly.
them.
And yeah, and neither one of them are I guess Hayes healthy as a playmaker. He hasn't been so much this year, though I think we'll probably see more of that. But he's always seems to do well with young guys, and I just think there's an opportunity there. And then, you look at the fourth line, and if
It's lots of decisions.
yeah, it gets tough because do you even want to call up Allison if he's playing on the fourth line and you have Zach McEwen who's playing well?
Yeah.
You really want Allison to get on a roll and stay healthy. So I think they'll hold back on him. But that doesn't even include Brassard, because if Brassard is back, then you have a fourth line of Brassard, Lindblom, and McEwen.
And then where's Patrick Brown? And then where's Allison? And where's Nate Thompson when he's back eventually?
I think Nate Thompson, there's a good chance that he might lose his spot in the lineup.
Oh yeah, I would agree, but I would
he's not coming back for a while.
No.
And Patrick Brown's outplayed him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Think so?
Brown's look better for sure. I'm just saying logistically,
he's faster.
Yeah, he's definitely faster, and I mean, Brown almost is like a version of Thompson but he has legs. Like he actually can skate.
He's younger.
Quicker.
Yeah,
so that plays a factor for sure. But I would say you're definitely right. Like Thompson's looking like the odd man out, but just logistically, like that fourth line logjam. Like I don't know if they're gonna try to sneak someone down through waivers or just keep. Yeah, if they're healthy, who knows? There could be an injury next game. Fingers crossed.
They would honestly, it would unfortunately probably be Frost
who gets sent back down. Yeah.
Yes, just because of the risk of losing guys, and I don't think they can risk that. I think they would tell him look, you're going to be back up. This is just a numbers game, and you're waiver exempt.
Exactly.
It's literally
playoff time, maybe.
Right, and again, that's assuming we'll even be healthy. But you're not going to lose Brassard. You don't want to lose him. You can't lose McEwen, and you can't lose Brown. There's nobody else to throw through waivers. And let's talk about Max Woolman for a minute, because he's a guy that I don't want to say I was harsh on him, because I've always talked about how I see him as an NHL player.
Yeah.
But he has definitely stepped his game up again. He's been more noticeable, more physical, getting more scoring chances. And I have to say, I still don't want to see him in a third line role. It's fine that he's there with injuries. I'm not. And I think he actually probably has his best game ever against the Devils.
Yeah. And you can see too, just to jump off that.
No, go ahead.
From moving from the fourth line to the third line, you saw when he was on the fourth line, he wasn't really taking chances, but you put him with a couple more skilled players and you see the skill kind of coming out. He's trying a few moves out there. He's trying to deke around players and do some things that were successful for him in the AHL in terms of scoring goals and bringing it to the NHL level, where, I mean, it's comfortability, right? Because obviously it's his first cup of coffee in the NHL, so he doesn't want to, try too many things that are out of the box, especially on a fourth line. But now you see him put with some more offensive guys, and you kind of see some of that offensive ability kind of shine a little more.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I also think this is the result of when a team plays well.
Yeah.
If you think about a few weeks ago, everybody's like, well, everybody sucks. It's no, the team is playing poorly. The odds that everybody in your team sucks is nonsense.
Yeah.
But your team has to play.
It's hockey.
Yeah. And they, quite frankly, I think, this is I think Fletcher's done a good job when he's needed to. When he had to make a decision, he made it. When he had to make trades, he's made them. He's been more patient than fans, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
But I do think that this is kind of a blunder on him to not recognize that AV didn't have a good grasp on this lineup last year. I mean, he gave him the benefit of the doubt, which I can appreciate, but he never had it. I mean, we were talking about even the beginning of the season, and while the Flyers were winning, it was similar to last season where
it didn't look right.
Yeah, it's like they were winning based off of, and again, people might not like that I say this, they were winning based off of talent, just literally a bunch of guys coming out, making a nice play. Even if you look at the goals they were scoring when they were struggling, they were all individual plays. If you look at that game against the Devils, who again were struggling, and it's not just the game against the Devils, they're actually making plays again, sustained pressure in the zone. Literally, I have not seen that all year until Yo took over.
Oh, and just another thing to bring up in terms of, the switch over from Yo and how that's kind of affected things is since the coaching change, we've had 2 goals, 12 assists, 14 points. between the defense core, and that's only 5-game sample size, so it's obviously small, but we'll see if it continues. Before that, in 22 games, 34 points from the defense. So that just shows, I think there's more of a green light. And when you green light for the defenseman to kind of jump up in the rush and take some more chances offensively, which if you look at the modern landscape of the NHL, that's a key. Yeah, that's a key factor in offenses and just being able to jumpstart an attack and having numbers versus the other team's defensive structure when you're coming in transition, which I think, people were wondering as the season began, why isn't Provorov scoring as much? Why does it look like he's not taking as many chances? Same with Sanheim. Why isn't he being as aggressive as he usually is? And I think you can definitely tell now with Yo coming in that was all coaching related, because now you see them really pinching down low, trying to get the cycles going, stuff like that, and carrying the puck in more often too. So.
Yeah, the only opportunity that you really saw the Flyers defensemen have were just shots on the point. Yeah,
which is, aren't very high quality in terms of going in. So.
And incredibly predictable. Yeah. In the sense that when they know that was a problem with our power play. It's literally all it did was cycle a little bit, get it back to the point, shoot it, try to clean up it's I just feel like the coaches before just didn't have a good grasp. And again, I'm sure they would contest this of, what they had available to them, and they can argue with it. But I was watching these games for weeks and I'm going what are you doing? And you can look at even the stuff I do post on Twitter. I'm I don't understand. What are you doing? I'm not supposed to be out coaching you guys. You're supposed to be smarter than me, and when I'm hey, this isn't going to work, and then I watch you change it halfway through the game because it obviously doesn't work. I'm again,
it's nice
I'm
to
not
be
a
right, but also you don't want to be right.
Coach, yeah. How am I supposed to trust in the guy when I'm out coaching you? Yeah. Not really, but you know what I mean. You need to be the smarter hockey guy.
You gotta have your finger on the pulse and understand, okay, hey, this likely isn't going to work. Here's why it isn't going to work, and let's roll with something else. And I just feel like he didn't have the ability to adapt in that way.
I don't know what it is, man, but he had it in the first year, but then you look at the way he was deploying certain players, he elevated Lindblom in the beginning.
Yeah.
And he killed it. And then by the end, it's the same thing as Hackstall. It's Hackstall was scratching Lindblom.
Yeah, well, it's what the Rangers fans kind of warned us about AV is that with the younger guys, he doesn't like to give a lot of a leash. There's a few favorites that he had, which I'd argue in this case would be Farabee. He always had him up in the lineup. And then other than that, if you were a younger guy and you're not producing for a few games, you were immediately just dropped down. Then you go back to veteran heavy, right? And that's what we saw from him most of his tenure, especially after the first year, though.
But yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And look, most coaches in the league have a life span, it's very rare that you are a head coach for a long time in the NHL. It's very rare that you're the right guy always. And that's why I say, when I'm bashing him, I don't want people to think that I'm hey, AV is an idiot.
No, he's not a bad coach. He's one of the winningest coaches in NHL history. So
yes. But the one thing I kept thinking about, I was man, was Robin Lehner right? Because he called him a dinosaur in the beginning of the year. And again, it was mixed up with the whole pill thing. And obviously that's not what he was talking about.
No.
He was just calling him kind of an old school coach. And this guy doesn't get it. Right.
Yeah.
And maybe that came from Patrick. Who knows? But at the same time, I'm that was a problem. Exactly. I was he was.
And then, if you're a player and you're constantly seeing a coach kind of hammer the same thing at you and it's just not working after a while, you're probably just going to tune out what he's saying anyway. And that's what I feel happened. They just ended up tuning him out. And then to speak even to more of the changes that, at least that I've seen in the game, I don't know if you've seen them as well, but what I've noticed is a staple of AV's system was the wingers would fly the zone and it'd give limited opportunities for the team to transition up the ice because it's either make a 200-foot stretch pass or carry the puck up the ice. Which and then
such a
mistake, and then get
passes
exactly, and then get boxed out by carrying the puck up because they know, hey, this guy has nowhere to pass to, so he's going to carry it up. Let's pressure him, and then it's a giveaway in the neutral zone. Then you have a bunch of odd man rushes against. The wingers are staying considerably lower. They're basically not really even leaving the zone as the team tries to transition up the ice. You see them do like a little 1-2 pass up to the winger, and then from there the winger makes another pass, and the transition game's so much smoother.
Sorry. Finish what you want to say. I was just
that was it. That was it. Yeah.
Dude, the reason I interrupted you because I'm like, literally, I was like, what was I saying last time? Ducks fly together. Exactly. Like I say that all the time because
you need support. You need support as a player because not every like if you leave yourself only one option, eventually the other team's going to catch on.
It's not just
to what you're doing, right?
Dude, I would argue, and I agree with your breakdown of AV system, and it's even admitted because Lawton talked about it. Remember, I think you brought this up as an example.
Yeah.
That he kind of called Lawton out. He's like, yeah, we want him to go out of I think it was you, maybe in the podcast.
No, it
was you, right? Yeah, and you were like, just pointing out the quote that AV was like calling out Lawton, where he's like, no, we want him to fly out of we want the two players to just fly out of the zone and receive a pass. And I like in my mind, like what I thought, I was like, those are the worst teams in the NHL that play that way.
Yeah.
Like literally that
suicide passes. That's what you're basically looking for. Okay, I'm going to try to fling it up the ice 200 feet. Chances are it's probably not going to be a tape-to-tape pass because how often are you hitting 200-foot tape-to-tape passes every single play?
And not just that. Think of it this way, okay? Odds are you have two defensemen back. You have one player making the pass up. You have two men rushing the puck up. How many players are the two guys going to beat when realistically you're at least dealing with three players on the other end? The center and the two defensemen.
Yeah.
What are the odds that those two players are going to beat three players on a 2-on-3?
Probably not, because first off, you can see the pass coming from a mile away because there's no other options. And then the second reason is even if they get the pass, now they're standing still because you're not going to be hitting them in stride on a 200-foot pass. So they're waiting for you
at the blue line.
Yeah. Probably. And then once they get the puck, they're not going to enter with any speed. And then defenseman can easily gap up.
How often did we see that? How often do we see one guy get the puck and then one guy's on the other side of the ice and then the rest of the team is back in their own zone?
And then nobody's there to support. And then that's why no offensive opportunities were created.
And then you lose possession like that. And that's exactly the stuff I was saying where I was like, yo, this is the coach.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is your system, dude. And it sucks. And that's what I kept saying. I was like, and I have a good friend, and we'll have him on the podcast again. His schedule sucks right now, but Anthony Merrigan, people who listen to this, they know him. He's a legit hockey player. He plays pro. He actually just played, I forget the FPHL. He actually just got signed by Bridgeport. I think it's Bridgeport.
Awesome.
Something like that. Anyway, but I grew up with him, and he knows his shit. And he's like, dude, I don't even know if this is AV. I'm like, dude, this is AV. Because he was like, and then he hit me up like a day later. He goes, dude, he's like, I think it's the coaches. Because like you just like when you see players who are good, and they're not producing, it doesn't mean like he's like torturing these guys. It just means like you're not getting it from them.
Yeah.
Let's transition over to the D actually, because we've been talking a lot about the offense, and I think I don't want to talk about Ivan Provorov yet. I want to talk about the other two guys right now who had a big game. Though I'd argue Provorov had a big game too.
He did, yeah.
But let's talk about Sanheim and Risto a little bit, just because early on they showed up big in that game. That pairing's still working. They've kind of always worked.
They're the go-to pair right now. Like when the situation where they need a solid shift, I feel like there's no hesitation. Get those two out there.
Again, Risto is better than Braun, and Sanheim is not as good as Provorov, but again, he's pretty good defenseman. He's number 2 on the team.
He's closer.
He's number 2 on the team,
exactly.
Right? So you do have a stronger pairing. When Ellis gets back, it's a whole different animal. And I understand why they don't break up that pairing. I mean, again, it works.
Yeah.
It's really hard to break it up. And Provorov, despite what everybody's saying, he is the anchor of this defense. I know people don't want to admit that.
No,
I know he hasn't been perfect. But again, when he struggles, the team is also struggling typically. You very rarely see where like the team is on a roll and Provorov is the weak spot. Like literally name one time where you've seen that, where the team was rocking and rolling and winning and like Provorov wasn't the best defenseman on the team. It just is
very rare. Very rare.
It's very rare. Like again, last night he had 2 assists also. Sanheim had a goal and assist, right? Risto had 2 assists. Fucking Giroux was a plus, and Atkinson were a +5.
Yeah,
like you're talking about,
and
like
somehow Atkinson scores 3 goals and Giroux only gets 1 assist, mind you. Which is
dude, that was what. Well, he could have honestly. Atkinson could have had more goals that night.
Could have.
Giroux should have had more points.
pretty much.
It didn't even reflect. And I'm actually surprised the game didn't get out of hand. I thought it would. I thought it was actually, I was like, dude, they might score 8 today the way they're playing.
They had their opportunities. There were a couple posts there, crossbar by JVR.
Yep. So. And let's talk about JVR before. I forgot about him. I don't want to leave him behind. He has looked like a completely different player since he was fired.
Oh, of course. And I mean, that could speak to maybe comfortability and what the coaches were preaching, and the fact that, you know, that style of play for a guy like JVR, who isn't the, you know, fleetest of foot, probably isn't going to open him up to getting to pucks quite often. But when you
literally scored immediately, Vasili.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's kind of like, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just like, how many guys, it's almost like you took the weight off their shoulders, or it's like they all scoring immediately. It's like literally you were like forcing somebody to run with a 50-pound pack on their back.
I think it's just a frustration being relieved. Like, hey, you know what? Things that weren't working are finally going to get changed. That makes us as players be like, okay, we're going in the right direction. Yeah, exactly. But also JVR is known to be streaky, right? So, I mean.
Yeah, but it wasn't just the streakiness as far as finishing.
Oh,
It was invisible.
You could barely notice him, exactly. And now he looks like a factor on the ice in almost not every time he's out there, but he's creating chances. Like even last game he didn't score, but he had some grade A chances where he probably could have scored and got unlucky with a crossbar, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, he definitely good defensive plays too.
That's good news for the Flyers, because you could equate the first, 20 games of the season as a huge slump for JVR. And like I said before, we know how streaky he is. So if he's going on one of those big hot streaks, that's only better for his line mates and, the third line of the Flyers, who might not even really be a third line if him and Hayes are clicking together. So, I
want to get back to the D, but I was, shout out to Bill Matz. We were talking about this earlier. So we both listen to his post game shows.
Yeah,
if you guys don't listen, they're really entertaining. He does a great job, and you guys can call in and stuff. It's great. Like, I highly recommend him in general. He's just such an entertaining guy to listen to. But, so many people are like calling in, they're like doing the math, and they're like, the Flyers aren't going to make the playoff. And I'm like just sitting there laughing, and I'm like, and again, this is not a knock on anybody there. I'm not saying anybody's stupid or anything like that. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? I feel like these people, you're trying to do it for yourself, because we had high expectations. They don't meet expectations. When you feel like you're out of control, you need a sense of control, right? So now you're going to say, well, they're not making the playoffs.
Yeah.
But you didn't predict this.
It's like 24 games into the season. Like, anything can still happen.
They're literally 4 points out of a playoff spot. Right now.
Exactly.
And hold on, and this is a shout out to Jason Martinez, because he brought this up on his podcast, and I knew it, but like I didn't realize it until he said it. You probably know this too. Is that the last time the Flyers lost 10 in a row?
Yeah, they made the playoffs. 2
seasons. They made the playoffs both times.
Yeah.
And then when they won 10 games in a row,
they didn't make the playoffs.
They missed the playoffs.
I remember that season. It was very fun seeing them. I remember them.
I think Columbus had a 17-game win streak or something.
Something crazy.
And Minnesota had a 10-game.
I remember them winning 10 in a row, being like, "Oh my god, this might be the best Flyers team like in the past decade," and then like completely nosediving after that. But the thing is, sorry to cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
The thing is, like, if let's say the Flyers would have lost like 3 in a row, I don't know, like 3 in a row a week this month, and then next month lose like 3 in a row, and then the next month lose 3 in a row, that equates to like 9 games, versus like now they could go on like win, lose, lose. And like, just because it's 10 in a row doesn't mean they're going to keep losing 10 in a row consistently. Like, it's just not realistically going to happen.
Well, you're also assuming that the rest of the teams will be producing at the same rate.
And they're not going to go on a losing streak or have slumps, which we all know they will. Exactly. That's just how
look at Edmonton, right? And we were just talking about this before recording. Edmonton's on a 6-game losing streak. They're still in the playoffs, but
nobody predicted that with the start that they have.
Exactly.
And it just shows that everything fluctuates. It's sports.
Well, yeah, and that's actually what I wanted to say. It's like, if you actually knew what was going to happen, you wouldn't watch sports. Like, this is, and again, I'm a fan of tracking. Like, my job is in tech. Like, we use a ton of analytics. Like, I'm a fan of it, and it's so abused It's like, this is kind of what I'm talking about, where people are like, well, and again, this is not everybody, and not everybody uses the numbers or saying this either. So I'm not trying to make a blanket statement here, but it's like, it's people trying to control the narrative. Like they're like, oh, this is not, we know what this team is. You know how much I hate that saying? It's like, no, you don't, because St. Louis was the worst team in the National Hockey
won the
League,
cup,
and they won the cup. You don't know what they are. Stop it.
And I guarantee that if you go back, nobody was predicting St. Louis to win a Stanley Cup before they won that.
Absolutely not.
Run, so.
And our team in particular insulted Craig Berube. So the odds that Craig Berube was going to be the guy to take them to the cup, it didn't, like, honestly, it's kind of a funny narrative that it's Mike Yeo. Maybe it's his turn. No, I don't know if we're going to look with a healthy Ryan Ellis. This team is different. You know, they definitely have to go on a streak here. They have to beat better teams. They did beat Vegas, which was good. They've beaten good teams in the beginning of the year. They have to get on a roll. They have to do something substantial. Yeah. But it's all within the realm of possibilities at this point. Like,
exactly.
Nothing at this point is set. And this is like, people say it about young players all the time. Like, I had somebody who's a fan, who's a really nice person. He hit me up about like, oh, like, you know, I see the Konechny video you have that's like pinned at the top of your Twitter. So I used to do all these like player breakdown videos, and I have Konechny being like, you know, a star player. And I'm like, yeah, if you look at the projection that he's on, I was like, he's on that. And they're like, oh, what do you think about it now? I'm like, exact same thing I thought before. I was like, I don't look at a 24-year-old player and go, this is what he is. This is what he is. It's like, think about Sean Couturier when he was 24. He was like just getting good.
Yeah, and he was barely, like, I mean, even scratching the surface offensively in terms of what he could do.
And look, like, at what Konechny did younger.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, people, I mean, love to say, oh, now the NHL, it's a younger league. Players' primes are gotten younger as well, between 24 and 28. It's not really not how it works.
I don't agree.
I personally think, I mean, if for athletes specifically, prime age probably between 26 and 30. I mean, that's
absolutely. That's
my perspective.
Yes.
I mean, obviously there's outliers where they're just so talented that they're still producing at younger age.
But that's what they are. Yeah, they're outliers.
Exactly.
And Cale Makar is an outlier. He is a phenomenal young player. He is an outlier.
Yeah, 98% of defensemen who come into the league at age 19 are not going to. They're
not doing that. And actually, you can make the case that Provorov is too, because everybody wants to forget that Provorov was a leading defenseman in goal scoring. Yeah, like, he was an insane young talent. People are just. What happens is when your team plays poorly, like
recency bias.
It's also, yes, totally. But when your team is playing poorly, like, it will reflect on you. And this is what we were talking with Isaiah, you know, where he was talking about Heiskanen. I love Heiskanen. I see Provorov same level as Heiskanen. I don't see a difference there. I know other people do. If Provorov had that level of support that Heiskanen does, if he had Ryan Ellis, we'd be having such a different conversation about it.
Like, Heiskanen has John Klingberg to play off of.
Well, name me a top defenseman in the league that doesn't have support and produces numbers by himself.
Yeah, who doesn't have a good solid partner that's at least equal to. Yeah, Victor Hedman. And
he's got Ryan McDonough.
Yeah, he's got McDonough too. That's what I'm saying. Like, he's got Sergachev. It's really tough. You basically probably can't. So
you really cannot. Okay. Yeah. You really cannot. Even Roman Josi, who is phenomenal, his best years were playing with a very deep defense.
Yeah, I still have Zach home there right now. So.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you're not talking about a guy who's doing it by himself.
Yeah, you can't carry the load on your own, really.
Well, there are some guys who can. Okay, they're called Nicholas Lidstrom. You know, it's like Nicholas Lidstrom, Chris Pronger, Wayne Gretzky.
Some of the best players of all time, you know.
Okay, yeah, great. Okay.
Like, are we expecting Ivan Provorov to be one of the best players of all time? No, we know he's a good player. He's never going to be to that level, though.
Yeah, I mean, Desjardins was a phenomenal defenseman. He was traded in his early 20s.
Yeah,
like at the age of when we traded for Leclerc and Desjardins, I'm pretty sure they were in their mid 20s, and we traded Recchi, right? And everybody's like, oh, we kind of got hosed on this deal, and then Desjardins evolved into being the second best defenseman in Flyers history. You know what I mean? It's like John Leclerc evolved into being a 3-time 50-goal scorer. It's like, we have to stop saying that the times have changed. Not that much.
No.
I remember a few years ago where everybody's like, oh, the game's like not as physical. And I'm like, just as physical. The only thing they can't do is hook and punch each other in the face randomly.
Yeah.
But the game is
But
incredibly physical.
Well, and that's if you add, the fact that they're playing with so much more speed now, just every hit's going to be more physical in general because
Harder
if you put
to
more
hit.
speed, if you put more speed behind something, it's going to, hurt more. That's just
The only
how
thing
it
I
works,
agree with
but
people on is that size is not as much of a barrier into the league,
oh,
but it
100%.
definitely still matters. And I just want to talk about Cole Caulfield for a minute, who I still believe in, and I still think is a great young player.
He's going to be a great player.
Without a doubt. But tell me, how many of you predicted that season from him this year? Actually, my buddy asked me in the beginning of the year, he's like, hey, I want to bet. He loves to gamble. He doesn't even watch hockey. He's like, I want to bet on rookie of the year. And he's like, he asked me who to bet on. And I said, Lucas Raymond. And he was like, yeah, he's like, number one is Cole Caulfield. I was like, honestly, I was like, his team sucks. Unlikely. And I knew they were going to be bad this year. I think why people were surprised they're bad.
Remove Shea Weber and Carey Price from the equation, a number one defenseman. I mean, and
pretty much the reasons that you're a good team.
One of the best goalies.
And then you're relying on youth. And same thing with the New Jersey Devils. I knew that they'd be better, but I'm like, they're still going to suck.
Yeah.
I was like, they're young as shit. And I get, like, you can have some success with being young, but the Colorado Avalanche were average until their players became more mature.
Prime, hit that prime age for Ranson and McKinnon there.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go back to the defense real quick. So we talked about Rasmus Ristolainen. We talked about Sanheim. They obviously did really well. They just, I don't know, like something about that pairing, it just works. Be interesting to see where the Flyers are. I think they're going to re-sign Ristolainen. I
agree, because you're not going to give up that much, and then
if they bottom out and they can get a top first round pick for them, maybe. Yeah. And if they really think of a rebuild, I really don't believe a rebuild is anywhere even in sight. Even if they're bad. Yeah. And the reason I say this to people is like, it wouldn't be that hard to go out and get a top prospect. Like, no, not as hard. Like, we have so many good young players. Yeah. You just don't like them, or they're in the NCAA.
Exactly.
Or you're like it's like we were talking about where people were like, oh, the Flyers didn't draft well at all. And it's like they drafted average just like everybody else, and they have a ridiculous abundance of young players.
It's a crapshoot, so not every pick you're gonna make is gonna be like amazing,
Yeah, and a lot of times you want to get a top player, you gotta create a package, a significant one.
Yeah.
But if you really want to go out and get a top 5 pick, you can package up Morgan Frost and Bobby Brink
and your first rounder, and that's probably enticing for somebody.
Yeah, you could do that if you guys really want to do that. These things are possible. But it's like,
but there's no guarantee the pick you're going to get's even going to be as good as those guys anyway. So
right,
it's all relative to chance, especially with the draft. So that's why I like, everybody's saying, oh, we got to rebuild, time, to kind of tear it down and just get that high end talent. Just as we saw with where the Flyers picked number 2 overall with Nolan Patrick, we all thought he was going to be an amazing player, and he still may turn out to be that. But I mean, injuries got him, but also sometimes things don't work out. How many top level picks have been picked in the past where they just did not, pan out and be what they were supposed to be, right?
Or they're good and not great.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is the majority of players in the NHL are good players,
but not exceptional.
And not exceptional. I mean, Flyers got like Nolan Patrick has still only played 4 games this year. Those are injury woes. Like, coming in and having 2 30-point seasons and under 80 games a year, like he was 35-point pace for a big, strong centerman. Like, that's not bad at all.
No, it's a good start for a 19-year-old kid.
His career has obviously been completely derailed by head injury. And that's unfortunate, and hopefully he can get back. But that's not so much like a talent issue. If you look at his numbers in juniors, the guy had 102 points in 72 games. As a 16-year-old.
That's kind of insane.
Like, if you think that teams were like, yeah, I don't know, maybe we'll pick someone. It's like, no. Like, he was clear-cut the best player in the WHL.
Yeah, well, it's like teams looking now at Connor Bedard, and he's had like 100-plus points as a 16-year-old, and, like, you think teams aren't going to pick him? You know what I mean? Like I said, stuff happens sometimes.
Man. It happens all the time, dude. Like, you can even make the case that Eric Lindros probably was better than he ended up producing. And because of head injuries, it slowed him down. Like, he probably should have been Connor McDavid, like, which he kind of was, but then he kept getting
And
injured.
then those concussions.
Yeah, exactly. It slowed him, and his brother too. Even Keith Primo's career was derailed by concussions. There's been a lot of guys that are just like, they were better. That's why you look at a guy like Claude Giroux, man, he's special, dude. And like, knock on wood,
yeah,
he has no serious injuries.
His durability level is crazy.
Absolutely insane.
Like over the years that he's played through some stuff too, just because he's had to, because he's the team's best player. And that just speaks to, people saying, oh, he doesn't want to win, he's not a warrior. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's the opposite of that. He wants to win as much as you've probably ever seen.
I think it is an absolute travesty if you do not get Claude Giroux resigned.
Oh, I agree.
Even if we're the worst team in the league, and I think people might not agree with me on that. I'm like, he literally is the only reason we have not bottomed out by accident.
Yeah.
At times, he is the most stable force on this team. He is the most winning player we've had in the past decade, easily. And if he can finish his career as a Flyer, he is easily taking the second spot all time. And if this team is really good, which maybe they'll end up being, he might even be able to come really close to Bobby Clark's numbers. Like, why wouldn't you want that? What are you going to get in return that is worth, you're going to go out and hopefully get a top prospect, which again, you can go out and get in other ways, or you can just not panic and just know that you have to build a strong team to win games. Like, I remember we lost against the Rangers, and the Rangers announcers, I think they were saying like, oh, the Flyers just don't have any elite talent. No, you guys suck at analyzing the game too. It's the fucking coach. Sometimes it is the coach. We see it all the time. Yeah. Don't tell me this team doesn't have elite talent. They have a Selke winner on the team. You could say he's not that great. The guy won a Selke and put up more than a point per game in the process.
Yeah. Dominant. He's playing with, a busted up face, a cut on his wrist.
He had 6 points with a torn MCL or something like that in the playoffs.
Yeah. Hat trick on one knee against the Penguins.
Yeah. I really think the Flyers need to get their fucking shit together, and they need to play well as a team. And that will fix the lack of elite players, which I think is a nonsense statement.
Well, just being on the same page, and then back to how we were talking about the defense, and just the changes that Yo has been making and how that's kind of affecting the team on a whole. So last night, when Ristolainen, was in the presser post game, they were asking, with Yo being implementing some new changes, do you guys have more free reign to kind of, go up the ice, possess the puck more, look for offensive opportunities? And Ristolainen brought forth that, Yo's made it a point that he wants defensemen to get into the rush when they can, as often as they can. And I think that's something that we did not see under Vigneault. We kind of saw defensemen playing it a little more safe, which obviously it's a preference. Some coaches aren't going to want their defensemen playing that way. But like I was saying earlier, I mean, to have success in the NHL, it's all about success in numbers, success in speed. If you can rush the puck up with your defenseman and he's the one carrying it and leading that rush, then he has options to pass off to in terms of his forwards, and they can cycle back down low. That's just going to create a way harder time for a team's defense, just through the fact that they're not going to know exactly what you're doing offensively and how to maybe combat that, because your defense is almost acting like another forward, and then you have that one guy covering for him on the back end. So
yeah,
I like the scheme change for sure.
Totally, man. I think well said, and I think you definitely see that. You definitely are seeing that at this point, and obviously the defense are producing more points. And people have, it's a frustration that I've heard quite a bit where they're like, oh, we just don't have defensemen who are offensive. I'm like, literally all of them are, outside of Braun. I was like, literally, especially healthy. I was like, every single one of these guys has the ability to produce 40 plus points in the NHL. I was like, how did it magically happen that they just don't have this ability all of a sudden? I was like, even Rasmus Ristolainen was a power play guy and a point producer on the worst team in the NHL, or one of them.
The talent's there. It's just how are you going to utilize it to make it work? And I mean, what they were doing previously wasn't something that played into their strengths. And now you can kind of see the way things are changing up, that they're giving those defensemen just more opportunities to say, hey, we want you to possess the puck. We want you to carry the puck into the zone and try to make a play, because what's dumping the puck in going to do? And all it's going to be is us giving it away and starting from scratch, where we can maybe make a play out of you carrying the puck up the ice. So
yeah, well, let's talk about the bottom pairing a little bit too. So we got newcomer Kevin Connaughton playing with Yandel. I did see Yandel still made a couple mistakes, though. I'm not as harsh on it as everybody else is. I kind of already know what kind of defenseman he is. But Yandel obviously is playing better as well. And I think I didn't notice Connaughton too much, but in a good way. Yeah. Like I didn't see any breakdowns. He seems more physical. He actually even might be more physical than Sealer. And not in the sense that he wants to be more physical, is that I think he just is a little bit stronger than Nick Sealer. Just natural gifts. We'll see how he does long term, but the fact that he was waived by the Florida Panthers is a good sign, because they're a pretty good team. And if he can't fit on that team, it's a good sign for us, because maybe we got lucky there, and seems to be another waiver success really for the Flyers. And I think Nick Sealer probably is at risk of being waived and sent to the minors.
Especially once Alice comes back.
Exactly. And I think he would actually be safe too. And I think the Phantoms could really use a Nick Sealer right now. Who's done an admirable job, but I think Connaughton's look better. I think just everything has just looked better to me.
Yeah.
Like,
and you can tell with Sealer, I mean, he had a couple of games where he was playing above his head when he first came into the lineup to start the season. But you could tell he came back to earth. And I mean, he's not an everyday NHL defenseman. It's more spot duty, right? Like if you need to throw him a game here and there, he can handle it. But if you're playing him on an every night basis and isn't with a very strong partner, which I mean, at this point in his career, Keith Yandel is not the greatest defensively in his own zone. We can all attest to that. It's just not going to work out. And the thing with Connaughton that I notice, and I think adds a different element to that pairing, is I realized that with Sealer there's almost like a panic in him and Yandel's game, especially when possessing the puck in their own zone. It was almost like they knew that they were going to kind of give it away, or they knew that like a pass they were going to make wasn't going to connect, and then it was going to end up being trouble for them. Connaughton seems much, much more poised with his handling of the puck, just in terms of the way he's skating it up, but also like making outlets.
He's a better puck. I guess he's a better puck mover than Sealer.
Exactly.
Generally. So let's talk about the Golden Goose, man. Let's talk about the man. Let's talk about Carter Hart. I really don't think he's been a problem at all this year. I think he had maybe a period or two.
He's been their best player.
Yeah, and he is the biggest argument against a rebuild. Do you really, after all these years, that you finally find an elite goaltender who there's a good chance if they go to the Olympics that he is Canada's goalie?
Yeah.
He is arguably the most talented Canadian goaltender right now in the NHL outside of Carey Price, in my opinion.
I agree.
And like, you can't do a rebuild while you have Carter Hart. You are not wasting his years.
It's not smart.
You're
and
not
then
resetting zero again.
Does a goaltender of his talent after his 3-year contract is up, if the team is doing a rebuild, want to even stick around after that? That's something you have to factor in, right? So like, I don't know. You'll right.
Make him look bad.
Yeah,
it'd be harder for him to make money. I'll tell you that much.
That's for sure. But I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like, the team, in terms of rebuilding, I mean, there's certain additions that they can maybe make in the offseason where there's weaknesses. That's every team. But to say that what we were hearing earlier, the team has no talent, they're void of talent, they have to blow things up. Just a simple coaching change shows that not every way you approach something is going to work out in terms of the strategy that you have in your mind. So AV obviously didn't think that his strategies weren't going to result in the team scoring goals and, bleeding chances defensively, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously he didn't listen in terms of maybe any changes that Yo was trying to make while he was an assistant coach.
I mean, Yo might not have even tried though.
He might have
just been respectful and been like, it's your team. Like, what am I going to,
Yeah. But now you see changes getting implemented, and there's the other side of the coin where if you're willing to adjust and try something different, there's a chance that could work instead of just sticking with what you know. So
we'll see if they can keep it up.
Yeah, if they can keep it up. Agree. But so far, so good in terms of how they're playing.
They look
under
different,
him.
dude. It's not just the wins. Like, even the game they lost against the Avs, right? Like,
they created actual scoring opportunities, and they're playing with one of the most high scoring teams in the league.
Yes.
And keeping
and
up,
that was like the first game after. And you look at the way like they're even the game against New Jersey, I thought they still looked like jack shit. The last one where we lost 3-0. They looked terrible. But now that you see that Yo is actually having a little bit of time with the team,
get some practices.
He's going to have some real practices. We have the holiday break coming up, which if you look at those days off, you know, potentially you come back with Farabee, you come back with Brassard. I don't know if Ellis is that close, but I mean, Fletcher was kind of saying he's relatively close. But you come back with those two guys, you know, you're not even talking about Allison, who I think they were going to give him time. And then even the thing with Frost, like you figure Frost would be all right by then.
Lots of decisions to make.
Yeah, but I mean, you just look at the injection of talent back in the lineup when things are going well. It's like that's all. Like I'm interested to see what Joel Farabee is going to be like now.
Yeah, especially
because he was playing well.
Yeah, and in that dump and chase system where I mean it's not conducive. Really
I think he can play any system, to be honest.
No,
I think that's why AV uses him.
He's very talented and he's really smart in terms of his hockey sense. Like he's always in the right position.
Always.
So you're right there. Like that's why AV was not hesitant to use a young player like him in like such a high role in the lineup. But if you give him the free reign to like control the puck creatively, and then, you know, he's not going to get blasted, let's say, if he doesn't dump the puck in, which we don't know if that was happening, but that's just my, you know, interpretation. I don't
know if he was getting blasted. I think it's more of like, I think the team was like, I don't know if they individually went after guys, but I think that they're like, stick to the system. You know the system. You're not doing the system.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And they're like, yeah, we are. Your system sucks.
It's not.
So then they were doing what hockey players do. They were playing to the system, not just to not get yelled at. They're like, all right, well, we're supposed to do this. But like they know, you know, they're smarter than us when it comes to hockey. They know, they're not dumb. These guys are all been the best players where they go. And then they understand the game at such a high level. They're like, we have to play well as a team. That's what they all say. We have to play well as a team to do well.
You have to be on the same page.
Right. So they're trying to be on the same page. They're going to their playbook. And it just is not working. No. And like, oh my God, like literally as soon as I saw the power play without Mike Yo, and what was there was like a moment, I think we were already talked about, but when Frost was handling the puck and there was just an ability to move, there was just like the puck.
Yeah, last power play. We touched on it a little bit. Just the fact that like you saw him and Giroux like moving the puck back and forth. And it's almost reminiscent of Voracek and Giroux, I would say.
It just looked completely different.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thank God. Like, even if they didn't score, they were aggressive. And if you look at the way they're playing, it's like literally they're moving the puck fast.
And what do you notice that now that Michel Therrien has been relieved of his duties? Have you ever seen Claude Giroux on the right-hand side of the power play again?
I saw him in the beginning, and since then, no. I think in the beginning they were going with what they already did, and then they moved
as the changes are happening, they're kind of like, okay, let's move away from this because it's just doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't make a lot of sense, again, because this is another common thing that a lot of people say. They're like, and I've said this a bunch of times, is that, oh, the power play is predictable. I'm like, it has nothing to do with it. No. Like, they're all predictable.
Alex Ovechkin stands in the same place every night and scores 50 goals a year.
And you can say, oh, that's Ovechkin. Well, guess what? We have the best power play player in the NHL on our team.
In the last decade.
So it shouldn't matter that he's predictable too, right? So he has the ability.
He has the vision on the ice to make plays. That's what Drew's always been known for. His passing ability, his ability to see things that you, the average individual watching, would not be able to pinpoint on the ice. And then just to speak to Giroux one more time, because
go for it.
We kind of noted him moving back to center. Forgot to mention this earlier, but one more stat with him at center so far. Let me just pull it up here. So Giroux,
by the way, the Rangers are losing to the Coyotes, and it would be their second loss in a row.
Wow, that's very fun.
I hope they do lose that game.
I do, anyway, continue. As well. But so Giroux playing center for these last 12 games. Has 11 points in 12 games, and I heard that he's a left winger now. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that kind of like everybody was just like kept saying like, oh, well, you know, I don't want him playing center, and I'm like,
you haven't put him in that opportunity or in that position.
It's not just that. Even when he was playing center, he was still better than Kevin Hayes.
Yeah.
Like, I like Kevin Hayes a lot, but even when Kevin Hayes was in his prime, Giroux was still a better centerman. That's what I don't understand. It's like, when have you ever looked at Giroux playing any single position and be like, yeah, it doesn't have it? I get if you have a luxury at center, right? Which we did. I get that you have a luxury at center. You're like, well, we don't need to play him at center.
Yeah.
But you didn't have a luxury at center. And I think Mike Yo was like, he's like, this is arguably my best or second best center on the team. He's like, why would I not play him in the middle? We need to win.
That too. And then also you split up your two best players in Couturier offensively and Giroux. And then, as you were saying before, it just opens it up because now you don't have to worry about just, okay, if we shut this line down, what's the rest of the team going to do without, their best players spread out on the other line? So,
all right. Well, let's wrap it up here, but let's talk about the next two games. The Philadelphia Flyers, Thursday, December 16th, they will go up against the Montreal Canadiens. That'll be tomorrow night, a team that has definitely struggled in their own right. Another opportunity. And again, you can say that the wins will be against bad teams. It doesn't matter to me.
These are games you have to win.
You have to win. Good teams will win the games.
Good teams will win the games. And then, sorry to cut you off, but it doesn't matter either. It doesn't matter either. I mean, whether you're beating bad teams or good teams, after a 10-game losing streak, you need the wins as much as you can get them.
Yeah, you have to win. And that should be their attitude. And then they have a game against the Senators, who are actually just coming off an 8-2 victory over the Florida Panthers. And this is kind of what I'm talking about is like, yeah, they're not great teams, but they're still capable of beating you. So you need to show up and win. You need to play well. And honestly, they have an opportunity here to win 5, maybe 6 in a row. And if they can do that, it's not that the 10-game losing streak is erased. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely not.
But it doesn't hurt as much.
It's an opportunity to change the narrative of your team. And then you have a bunch of time off. I think you have off Sunday. You have off, because the game's on Saturday. You have off Sunday, Monday, and then they're on again on, really?
I believe Pittsburgh and Washington after that, right?
And then I missed the game. When's their next game?
After that Saturday.
They have 3 days off?
Yeah, I got a bunch off.
Yeah, they do have 3 days off. Wow, yeah. Capitals. That's going
to be crucial for Yo. He'll be able to put some more stuff into place detail-wise.
When did they play the Penguins? No, yeah, they have 3 days off. That's crazy. Yeah, so they have 3 days off, which will be crucial. And then they have a game on the 21st and the 23rd, Capitals, and then the Pens. And, they'll be tough games, but if they can win those 3 games leading up to it, or the 2 games leading up to it,
doesn't hurt as bad to lose those teams.
It's not just that, it's you build the right type of momentum, right? Yeah. You get your attitude, you get your swagger back. These are 2 huge games. If you can get 3 of 4 points in them, or crazily, if they can win 7 in a row here, the entire narrative changes. I don't know if that's going to happen, but if they have 3 games off in between, you're talking about getting bodies back in between. And then after that, you have the Christmas break. And the Christmas break gives you another break, an opportunity to get potentially Ryan Ellis back. And then you're really going in with momentum. Again, this is optimistic. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if that optimistic road does happen and they do win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games.
Well, we see the triggers leading up to that where it's a possibility. At least I do.
Right.
Like you're facing Montreal and Ottawa, who aren't the best teams, but they could beat you on any night. That's like any team in the NHL. But I mean, I would put it at a pretty high chance that they get out of this stretch with a 5-game win streak. And then now you're feeling good about yourself as a team, thinking, hey, we lost 10 in a row, come back and win 5 in a row. We're resilient. We can come back from anything. And I mean, that's the mentality you need to have in professional sports. And as you said, you come back after the holiday break with a healthy, Farabee, Ryan Ellis, Allison, Morgan Frost back from COVID. And then you're putting yourself in a position to almost have a second half in 2022, as you did in Avy's first year as a coach, I think, where you can kind of, go on a bit of a run in the second half, establish yourself as a playoff team. And then once you get in, who knows what could happen. So we're taking the optimistic view on the Flyers Nitty Gritty podcast for getting gritty with it. But I mean, everybody else has their own take on things. So who knows? But I think it's a possibility we see the team go on a big run here in the second half.
I mean, I don't blame people for giving up hope. Like, I really don't. I just don't like when people say, well, we already know. Like, no, you don't. Just like we didn't know that this would happen.
We didn't know that they were going to win 3 games in a row.
We didn't know they were going to lose 10 in a row. Exactly. We don't know. If sports were predictable to the level that everybody thinks they are, you wouldn't watch.
We'd all be rich, so
But you wouldn't watch. It wouldn't be
yeah,
entertaining.
exactly.
You wouldn't care. It'd be WWE without the like opera of it, right? It's like you're just watching people pretend to play sports.
Pretty
And
much.
like I get what Vegas does and all that, but I mean Vegas had I think the Flyers even with Tampa Bay the other night, and we lost 7-0 or whatever.
Yeah.
It was it 7-1 or 7-0? I forget.
7-1, I think.
7-1. Yeah, it was pathetic. But again, if they win those games, saying a lot, but if they can turn this streak into a solid streak, they have the ability to get out of the bottom here and get back into the conversation with plenty of the season left. And it's enough to kind of, at least say, hey, in the last 19 games, you're 7, 8, and 2, or whatever it is, right? It's like, it's not the end of the world. So they have an opportunity here to do better. And if it's really the team that I believe is more talented than they were playing, they should be able to do better. And they should at least be able to fight till the end of the season. And if they do make it in at the end to the playoffs and they come in with a great second half, that's how you really want to make it in the playoffs. Yeah. And I don't think that this team is the level of talent that is definitely out in the first round. You have a very talented goaltender. If Ryan Ellis is playing, you have as deep a D as everybody. It's really about the depth and can you continue to attack.
And that's the thing. They say it every year. I mean, analysts, media pundits, stuff like that. As long as you get in, you have the goaltending. Anything can happen. Just look at the Canadians last season.
And that is
Carter
true.
Hart, it's true. Exactly.
Look at the Canadians. Like you said last year, they weren't even close, which also says a problem with the playoff format, in my opinion. But they were not close good enough to be in the finals. Like they really weren't. They didn't stand a chance against Tampa Bay. They were much better teams that would have put up a better performance. They deserve to be there. Don't get me wrong, but they're not good enough of a team to be there.
Beat the Lightning anyway.
They're not. They were never going to win the cup, because they were eventually going to run into a team that was just. And that's the problem with the playoff format, right? They have like the second and the third team playing each other. It's like
I think they need to go back to the 1-8, like
totally agree.
Just because at least you get the best teams into the playoffs. You don't have like a really good team missing out because they weren't in the Atlantic Division versus being in the Metro.
100%.
Which is what we're going to see this season. Unfortunately, you're going to see a really good Metro team miss out and an Atlantic team get in over them who doesn't have as much points, which is kind of shitty, but. What are we going to do? And
I think the Atlantic Division is pretty weak. I guess Boston is not having the best season, but we're 5 points behind them, or 4 points behind them. We're 3 points behind Columbus. Again, Columbus isn't that good.
Columbus is dwindling. Like they had a hot start, but they're tailing off now.
Yeah,
in the games that I've seen, I've been tuning into some of their games, and you could just tell that they're going into a bit of a slump.
It's really a shame that the Flyers did this to themselves, man. Because it's like they literally just chose to make it as hard as possible.
Yeah, without that losing streak, it wouldn't have been smooth sailing, but it would have been. I mean, pretty much.
If they would have won half of the games, they'd be in a playoff spot,
or even go to overtime in half those games.
They would be in a wild card spot.
Yeah, in a wild card spot. So that's the thing. It just makes it even more crucial that, when you're playing those teams ahead of you now in the future, they really got to show up.
That's why that Washington game and that Penguins
Pittsburgh game are important. Yeah.
If they can win, that's what I was saying. If they can win out to the holiday, which is asking a lot, and I'm not, I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm hoping for it.
But not even win out. Just let's say they won the next two and then lost in overtime against the Penguins and the Caps. You're still getting points out of those games. You at least need to try to get points. But
they're divisional games. Like, it just changes the entire narrative, dude. Like if you can do that, the Penguins have won 5 in a row here too. But if you can do that, it's just a whole different story about what's happening, because you're talking about going from being 10, 12, and 4 or whatever, 8, 9, 12. No, they would have been 8, 12, and 4 to then being 15, 12, and 4.
It's almost flips the script. And
exactly.
I think too, a major thing is, Mike Yeo, he hasn't had a lot of practice time to implement like what he's trying to do with the team and their systems. Obviously, he's made some changes and he's going to make some in some of the practices they've had, but they had a practice today that was like an hour and they flew right to Montreal. Like, how much did he really have time to like work on the details of what he exactly wants? You get into that winter break, with 7 in a row, let's say, and then you have a lot more time afterwards before you resume to practice, hammer out those details. The roster in general is going to say, hey, this guy hasn't even put in his full system and hammer the details in with us yet, and we're already performing this well. What's their chances of wanting to buy into that fully after that? Pretty high.
So. Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, they're definitely more likely to buy in with success. And the one thing I do think that Fletcher, probably something we don't think about when bringing in a new coach is that like Yo doesn't need to learn the team.
And learn the strengths of the players that we were talking about before.
Well, yeah, but he obviously had things that he wanted to do while he was assistant coach that it wasn't his responsibility or role to do. And it's not like, you don't want to
overstep your boundaries.
He's your head coach. He hired you. You don't want to be like, let me undermine you and stuff. You can make suggestions, but he obviously had stuff that he wanted to do. He implemented them immediately. Probably was thinking them in his mind. And they worked. So he already had a strategy. And I think he probably already has the strategy in mind and is probably developing it more now. But he probably walked in with a plan. That's probably why Chuck Fletcher kept him too. Yeah. He's probably like, do you have a plan? He probably said what his plan was.
He's like, I like the sounds of that.
So he's like, it's better that than bringing in new coaches to learn the team quickly. Having said that, I'm pretty sure Vancouver's won 4 games in a row with Bruce.
I think 5 in a row now.
5 in a row now.
Yeah.
So that was a guy that I listed as a good option for head coach for sure. But it shows there's now 7-3 in the last 10 games. And there's a good chance that they're going to make their way up the standings because they're also much more talented than they're.
Just shows sports are crazy. One little switch, one little change, and anything can happen from a team being really bad to turning, the season around like it looks like the Flyers are about to do, at least.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's underestimated is that coaches matter. Like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, the players, but the players are executing a system. That's like saying the coach doesn't matter in football.
Yeah.
Like, we know it does because they literally
they're making the plays.
They're making the plays, the times of the plays. Like it all matters. It all matters. It all matters. All of it. Your goalie matters. Your defense matters. Your depth matters. The players on the ice matter. Your coaching staff matters. It just all matters. Your GM.
I think you just found the name of this episode. It all matters.
It all matters. Yeah. Oh, maybe I will name it that. Actually, that's a good one. All right. Let's call it here. We're at an hour and a half, and I'm exhausted. I've had a very long day. And for those who are wondering why I'm not on Twitter as much or making as many videos, I have a new job, and it's using up a lot of my time. So that's also why I asked Vasili to join because I need help. Like scheduling wise, just
okay,
like
we're gonna have a lot of fun with the pod coming up here.
I'm excited.
Can't wait to start producing just more content for everybody, and then just having everybody, listen in and have fun talking about the Flyers. That's what we love to do, right? We don't want to talk about a bad team, so let's hope they get on a 5-game win streak, and then next week we're talking about a winning streak versus a 10-game losing streak. Right?
Oh God, I can't stand losing too. All right, Vasili, anything you're working on? Any new articles you want to?
Yeah, so I should have an article coming out either Friday or Saturday, most likely, for Flyers Nitty Gritty. So you can catch that on flyersnittygritty.com. And then if you follow me on Twitter at FlyerItUp, you'll see me tweet the article out and it'll be easy for you to read it. So follow me on Twitter, and then you don't even have to go on the website, just straight from my Twitter profile there. Good to
awesome. Go. Excellent. All right. Well, this episode will be out for you before by the time people listen to this. It'll be out in the morning before the Flyers game against the Montreal Canadiens. So let's hope they win.
I'm feeling 4 in a row. I think it's going to happen.
I'm feeling it too, man. And I don't know. I feel a change in the air after watching them play. It feels like we're watching a different team, and that's what I wanted to say.
The flip's been switched. Have a good week, everybody.
Yeah. Quoting Mike Richards, they flipped the switch. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you again for listening. Please like and subscribe. Thank you again to Jim Steaks, our sponsor, for sponsoring the show. Cheesesteaks are awesome. Go get a cheesesteak. Thank you again. Please like, subscribe, comment. Share it out. It's a humongous help for the two of us. And it helps the show quite a bit. Hopefully everybody is enjoying it. And remember, always stay gritty.